Hi, welcome back. My name is Stephen, and today I want to dive into the wildest stories of ambition, power, and sometimes the perfect twist of karma. Now, this story is based on a true story. So, I want to tell you about it because equal parts it's shocking and sometimes quite satisfying. It's the rise and fall of a certain Karen in a quiet suburban community, and trust me, this Karen wasn't just interested in enforcing the rules. Her ambitions were much higher than that. So allow me to start at the beginning. Picture this: a cosy, well-to-do neighbourhood with perfectly trimmed lawns and the occasional squabble of who's parking where. Into this peaceful suburb moves Karen. Clipboard in hand, a fiery determination in her heart. Now, Karen had one mission the moment she arrived, and that was to join the Home Owners Association, also known as the HOA. And not just as a member, she had a target. She wanted to be on the board, the committee. But why? Power. Through her whole career, she had craved power like a moth to a flame. But what was her strategy? Well, she was ruthless, also clever. She began by integrating herself with all the right people, throwing dinner parties for the current board members, volunteering to organise neighbourhood events, even trimming other people's hedges, lawn edges, etc., just to get noticed. She'd often walk around the neighbourhood, clipboard at the ready, pointing at every minor violation to show that she was HOA board material. The way she'd play up to them. A masterclass in manipulation. If someone wanted her support for a garden project, she'd offer it, as long as they mentioned her name in glowing terms to the board, and it worked like a charm more often than not. But here's where it took a darker turn. There was one neighbour, I'll call him Jim, because it's obviously based on a true story. I'm not going to use real names, but Jim had lived in the neighbourhood for years and years, and he'd never really followed all the rules to the letter. There was a bit of tolerance involved, of course there was. He had an old shed in the garden that didn't exactly meet the HOA standards, but no one ever made a fuss. That is, until Karen came along. She made it her personal mission to get Jim's shed torn down, but why? Not because it was nice all, but because Jim refused to support her bid for the board. Karen pushed hard, and harder still, attending meetings, calling board meetings one by one, and filing endless complaints about the shed. She even dug up some obscure bylaw about unauthorised structures. And she used this to rally support against him. Eventually, though, Karen won, and Jim was forced to demolish his shed. But that wasn't the worst part. You see, Jim, already struggling financially, couldn't afford the fines. And the legal fees were piling up too. Karen was piling on him. Within months, he lost his home. All because Karen wanted to prove her power and her worth, to be considered for the board of the HOA, and now she had bigger things in mind. So with Jim out of the picture, Karen's path to the board was pretty clear. She was elected with ease, but that wasn't enough for her. She immediately set her sights on the position of vice president. Again, she schemed her way, using her charms, backroom deals, and her ruthless efficiency, and before anyone could blink, she was vice president, and now just a heartbeat away from her total control, which she'd always craved. And then finally, she did get what she always wanted. She became the president of the HOA, an absolute ruler of her little suburban kingdom. But then, this is where the story becomes full circle. And don't forget, this is based on the truth. Remember Jim? Yeah, after all these years away, life had been tough for him after Karen forced him out. He lost his home, but not his spirit. He moved away, but he started over and built himself back up, slowly but surely. And here's the twist. As fate would have it, a few years later, the very property that Karen had been living in came up for auction. And by now you can probably guess who showed up with cash in hand to buy it. That's right, it was Jim. He bought Karen's house, the same house where she'd plotted his downfall. It turns out that Karen had outstretched herself. Her greed, her obsession with power, had led her into serious debt. So much so, she had to sell her home. And the ultimate stroke of karma, it was Jim, the very man that she had ruined, who ended up with a last laugh. So what is the moral of this story? Well, ambition can take you far, but ruthlessness can bring you down. Karma always has a way of catching you up, no matter how high you climb. And thank you for listening. That's the end of this story about HOA, Karens and karma, based on the truth. I would be honoured if you would join as a member, and then I can consider doing some member-only podcasts. To see more like this and to support the channel, join as a channel member. Thanks for being with me, and it's been a pleasure.